The first 2 episodes of Ahsoka are out, and it's already been met with heavy criticism by a couple of famous YouTubers and some commenters and Twitter users. And irrespective of how these critiques age, I just want us to talk about why they aren't good reviews of the show, even right now, and of Star Wars in general, and why somehow they're very common thoughts to see online. So critique number 1, the characters are bland and one note. Okay, so I understand this perception. Ahsoka especially seems like she's a boring character at first, so I almost fell into believing this too, but I caught myself because it just felt too weird and easy a critique. And I will say that while this might sound like a pseudo-intellectual grift or something, let me outline the characters and show you why this isn't true. Yes, Ahsoka is stoic and detached, but she's not all the characters. At the same time, Hera has a friendly smile and is happier and oozes confidence like I remember her doing in Rebels. David Tennant expertly voices the droid Hu Yang again with sarcasm and empathy. Sabine kind of mirrors Ahsoka, which makes sense for the master-apprentice relationship and could be boring, but so far it seems like good storytelling. They both lost someone they've loved, they lost each other as friends and as master and apprentice, and they both wish things were different. But Sabine is younger, more quippy, more likely to take stupid risks. She's kind of like Ahsoka mid-Clone Wars. She's more of a daredevil, and she clearly still has hope. When Ahsoka thinks about Anakin, there's no doubt she's racked with pain, and it makes sense because now she can never get him back. But Sabine might just see Ezra again, and so her musings about him are more hopeful. They also make her clearly show more emotion. Also, Ahsoka is like 40 or 50. She's not supposed to be a clown. Morgan Elsbeth is being played as a devout follower of a messianic figure in Thrawn, who is also in pain about something, as we see when she references what happened to her ancestors on Dathomir. Shin Hati is admittedly very quiet, but this does make her seem more dangerous, like a muzzled animal. And it's interesting that the scene where she sends a probe after Sabine mirrors Darth Maul, because you know who else was very quiet and reserved until it's time to fight, and then he's very much a rage monster? Yeah, so the critique of the character isn't holding up very well either. Ray Stevenson is setting us up fantastically for a portrayal of a character that is strong and brutal, but also quite tragic, and who will do what he has to succeed in the character of Baylan. Baylan seems to be loved so far, and even though I'm doing a bit of it too, I have to call everyone out on this, saying that this is the most promising, and reading into what the character will be is also clearly being done because Ray Stevenson passed away, and he rest in peace too. Otherwise, with the amount of insane political arguments flying around, I wouldn't be shocked if he was just called another big bad white guy. So no, bland and one-note characters is not an accurate critique. Critique number 2, the show is slow, and it is so far. But that doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, it does mean that it might be slightly less entertaining, sure, but not bad. That's as ignorant a critique as calling Blade Runner 2049 bad or Dune. And I mentioned 2 Denis Villeneuve products because he's known for being slow and methodical while still delivering beautiful visuals and a sense of awe. Now, if the critique is that Dave Filoni is no Villeneuve and so these scenes feel a bit dodgy, especially in the visuals department, I completely accept that. He isn't the best director, but he's not bad. These slower scenes are letting the actors communicate with each other like fairly real people without quips and exposition being spat out everywhere and an explosion every 5 minutes like a bad Marvel movie. Now, you can argue that this isn't the most entertaining, and I'm sure the box office for Blade Runner would tell you that much, but honestly, calling it bad filmmaking is just ignorant. Now, here's critique number 3, but first, if you like the arguments I'm making so far, leave a like and subscribe, and if you would like to support the channel, there's a link in the description to our Buy Me a Coffee account. There'll be more videos on Ahsoka and filmmaking coming up. Critique number 3, non-Rebel fans will struggle. Do people forget that the first Star Wars technically had a lot of characters and plot lines that weren't completely explained to the audience, but just instead floated all around the actual movie, and yet fans not only understood this but embraced it because the characters were cool and had clearly stated goals to root for, which I don't think Ahsoka has fallen short of at all. It made the world feel very alive and full. The question of who is Vader, who is this new hope, what has Obi-Wan been doing all these years, etc. weren't answered, and yet we were able to understand and be invested in the story, and I think that's what can and will happen to Ahsoka. Like I said, I haven't seen Rebels in a long time, more than 5 years. I can barely remember it, but this feels all good and believable to me, and in fact, going back to the pacing also allows non-Rebel fans to keep up, in my opinion. We get to see what matters and how much they matter to certain characters, so I think the setup is fine. Critique number 4, it doesn't look magical yet. Ironically, this is the next critique, but it's honestly true so far. The cinematography is a bit bland. There hasn't been a scene or sequence that made me go wow yet. The closest is probably when they were looking at the map in the 2nd episode. And the follow-up to this is that these fight scenes are not as interesting as they could be. This edit that's been circulating around Twitter shows that this might be true, and it's annoying because it seems like a simple color grading and motion blur issue, but perhaps it will get better. It's not great and the scene should look great, but it's not bad either. So far, all the fight scenes, especially the one between Sabine and Shin, have been well choreographed. Critique number 5. The lightsaber is nerfed and something feminism because Qui-Gon Jinn and Han Solo died, but everyone else is fine. Okay, so if this is a lightsaber heat issue, Sabine should be dead, the Inquisitor should be dead, Reva should be dead. But if this is a medical issue, well, Qui-Gon Jinn didn't get proper medical help in time. And it's probably the most painful part of that scene when you rewatch it, because he dies, but Obi-Wan might have been able to save him. And Han was not only old, but also force sensitive, and also fell from quite high up. And if this is a representative of deranged feminism and the message, they're doing a trash job, which is good for the writing. They literally state to us that Ahsoka has failed as a master, and Sabine is not even remotely a talented Jedi or force user. And it's clear Shin not only owns her in that fight, but is practically toying with her like Vader did to Luke in Empire. Now, I don't know if the show will have some badly written girl boss moments in the future, but so far, it's not a coherent argument. And speaking of other lightsaber survivors, I mean, is it okay that somehow Darth Maul survived getting cut in half, or somehow Anakin and Luke aren't immediately traumatized and put in shock by getting a hand cut off and 2 legs being doused in lava in Anakin's case, and somehow there's technology to get their hands back? I think at this point, apart from criticism on how cool and deadly the lightsabers need to look, the critique on their ability to kill someone instantly is quite dead, unfortunately. Especially if you add the theory that because they are so hot, they would cauterize any wound leading to no bleeding. When you add the fact that Sabine is stabbed to the side and not the spine, and then receives immediate healthcare from the society that can replace neurons needed to make a prosthetic arm work and build a cybernetic creation like General Grievous or Darth Vader, I don't think this is a big issue. This is sci-fi. This is Star Wars. You know, let it go, please. Oh, and there are quite a few honorable mentions, but because they are honestly so out of touch, I'll just put them on screen. And that brings us to the reason for the season, why it's cool to hate Star Wars now. Reason number 1, because it gets a lot of clicks, and because quite a good portion of the Star Wars fans are either too busy, which good on you, or lazy to check out the new content for themselves, as you can see from these comments gotten from channels like Nerdrotic, The Critical Drinker, and FilmSpeak, or too jaded to care to watch it themselves. Now, this is very, very fair. Yes, you heard me. Disney has made Star Wars hit or miss, and unfortunately more popularly a miss. That's what you expect when the 3 biggest products in the last decade have been executed poorly. That is the Kylo Ren trilogy, and the smaller efforts from the TV shows aren't all-out hits either. In fact, it's been more popular when something bombs. Essentially, most people that like Star Wars didn't see Rebels because it's TV. They didn't see Solo based on its box office. They didn't see Andor based on its viewership reports, and they didn't see The Mandalorian season 1 and 2, even though they were quite good because it's a TV show. They might have seen Rogue One, but that's not enough. Most people saw the poorly executed and infuriating Rey trilogy, and that's not a good look. You wouldn't buy a burger from a fast food restaurant that's known to be hit or miss with the food. And so it is very easy to make a video on why its new product is bad and have quite a lot of people accept that it is, whether it is or not. It is, after all, the expectation. Reason number 2, politics. Please stop critiquing things that aren't necessarily and consistently political in a political way, just because you've been hurt in the past. I was watching the Nerdrotic review, and as big a fan as I usually am, I was just very disappointed every time he would go, "A white guy, I'm sure he's incompetent," or "A white guy, I'm sure he's evil," because even though he was right about these characters, where's the merit in the observation? We have Ray Stevenson playing a white guy who's evil, tragic, and handsome, powerful, and competent, all at the same time. So I don't understand what this is about. Why can't you just enjoy the show for what it is and not bring over the hatred while it's not completely misplaced? The hatred from what has been done to characters whose race you identify with in the past. Are you any better than the black people who go, "A black guy, I'm sure he dies," or "I'm sure he's stupid," carrying over grievances from an even worse period in history for those characters, even when the story justifies this? No, you're not. It makes sense that this character will die. He just came in contact with a Sith Lord or Dark Jedi, whatever. And you know who else died? His black second in command at the hand of a white girl. There's no consistency in this political messaging if it is political. Is this a white power play now because she died that way? This is infuriating because I don't even watch things like this, but I'm being made to. You see how crazy it sounds when everything is race, gender, politics all the time? Of course this character is evil. He's been working with the Empire, and he's not being maligned by an abusive superior after doing something that should be considered heroic like Poe Dameron. He's being arrested for remaining loyal to the Empire or his investors. Politically, isn't that a jab at big corporations and their messaging? These are 2 different things. And I wish it wasn't cocky incompetence that got the captain killed. He clearly should have just shot them down, or at least taken a stronger force to subdue them. That does feel weird, but it's not unforgivable. And I don't know if that would have completely stopped them. They are powerful Force users. And also, on the topic of male representation, I think we need to remember that much like The Godfather didn't and doesn't need a lot of female characters with or without a lot of agency in the story to be a great movie, which it is, Ahsoka and the other stories don't need a lot of male characters, and if it stays that way, it's fine as long as the storytelling and logic are consistent. That shouldn't be a controversial take. And the Sabine is gay for Ahsoka jokes don't even make sense. So what, these two are gay for each other? It's a look of friendship, and you can put any tender look on replay like that and call it something that it's not. Reason number 3, the nostalgia groups. I saved this for last because it truly is the most touchy, and I understand nostalgia is very touchy and no one likes their characters or stories being changed for any reason, and even with a good reason it can be hard to accept the new version. Doctor Who is historically a character who changes actor, but yet people have their favorites and are attached to certain iterations. The only thing we have to accept rationally is that if the new version is well written, then it is, and it will get the reception it deserves by a new audience even if we can't love it. Also, my favorite Doctor is David Tennant, and I'm happy he's back, and I'm happy he's in Ahsoka. Back to Ahsoka, honestly, I think this show is getting judged too quickly. YouTubers like Robothead called Andor a snooze fest with insert TIE fighter for nostalgia at first, but by the end, many others with similar politics like The Drinker said it was good and maybe even the best, but unfortunately centered around a character and story arc that perhaps no one cares about. This could very well happen to Ahsoka. The show clearly has its problems. It's not, Space Odyssey. It has some weird coincidence things and perhaps not the best character introductions, and it could have better pacing maybe and look better. I mean, this isn't Oppenheimer, so there is definitely room for improvement, and I hope it gets better.